Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the very special Whistler Society Séance. I'd like to ask everyone to stay on mute until we call on you if you're asking a question. Right now, I'd like to hand over to Bill Toomey, the chairman of the Whistler Society.
Thank you, Joan, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you all. And in particular, I'd like to welcome new attendees joining us this evening, and especially our friends from the Oscar Wilde Society. And as many of you will know, James McNeill Whistler and Oscar Wilde were, at one time at least, very good friends, but certainly two of the great characters of the artistic and literary life in Chelsea. Anyone interested in joining the Whistler Society can do so by joining our website, which is thewhistlersociety.org. And that's my little plug for this evening. But I'd also like to extend our thanks to Joan Harper for arranging this event, and hopefully that she'll be able to make contact with Mr. Whistler very shortly. We share a very common interest in promoting the life and works and enduring legacy of Mr. Whistler, and we're especially privileged at present to have the wonderful Whistler exhibition at the Tate Gallery. And we're deeply grateful to Dr. Carol Jacobi and Dr. Isabel Muir for all their dedication and hard work in bringing this remarkable exhibition to fruition. So this evening, we can look forward to hearing Mr. Whistler's views of the world, and in particular, his reflections on many of his works, including his fascinating sketchbooks, as well as the more celebrated paintings. And Mr. Whistler has left a lasting impression, not only on the world of art, but indeed Chelsea itself as well. So I'm now going to hand you back to Joan Harper, and hopefully we'll engage with Mr. Whistler very shortly. Joan?
Thank you, Bill. Thanks. I would like to direct everyone to a few housekeeping notes. So to get the best view of the presentation, in the upper right-hand corner here, you'll see an option for speaker view, or, well, you should be selecting speaker view. In the bottom down here, you should be on mute until we ask you to unmute in order to ask a question. If you're having trouble with sound, you can click the small arrow down here where it says video, and you can increase the sound. If you'd like to chat with us during the seance, feel free to use the chat feature. And now I would like to ask Bill to unmute and help us to call on Mr. Whistler.
So I'd like to call on Mr. James Abbott McNeill Whistler. Are you there, Jemmy?
I can hear you. Hold on. Ah, there you are.
Wonderful.
You have summoned me once again.
We have indeed. We have a number of questions for you. So, Joan, as the compere, could I hand over to you to ask the question, to call on the questioners?
Thank you, Bill and Jemmy, and it's lovely to see you again.
It's lovely to see you again, Joan. I remember you from the last few times.
Oh, well, that's nice to be remembered. We have a very large group of people here. You may have heard that there's a major retrospective of all of your works going on at the Tate Britain, and lots of people who have some very interesting questions for you. So I would like to, without further ado, ask Martin Riley to unmute. You will remember Martin. He's our former chairman of the Whistler Society. Martin, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Mr. Whistler, can you hear me?
I can. Martin, form
Great to see you
pose.
again. A
Was there a
delight to have
coup
you
of some
batting this
sort?
evening. Yeah. A lot's happened since we last spoke. The most important thing, really, is this wonderful exhibition retrospective of your work at Tate Britain. And it presents you, and I quote, both a boldly experimental artist and cosmopolitan celebrity, departing the conventions of Victorian society in pursuit of truth, beauty, and progress, unquote. Given the opposition you and your art encountered during your life, do you feel smug or gratified at hearing yourself described that way in the 21st century?
Well, of course, it is always gratifying to hear one's work praised, but you seem to think that I should be surprised. Now, genius will always win out. What amazes me is that some of your modern painters, like Picasso and Bacon and Pollock, are equally lauded. My goodness, even since my own day receive as much attention as myself. It just goes to show that your art critics and so-called people of taste are no better than the Ruskins and Wildes of my acquaintance. They are still pecksniffs and podsnaps. I won't deny that it sometimes annoyed me to think the judgment of my work was in the hands of fools and charlatans, but it is not easy to be a visionary, to be ahead of one's time. I think the phrase you used was boldly experimental. I see the so-called impressionists cited for their boldness, but really, as dear as Degas and Monet were to me as friends, they were clearly inspired by my earlier work. How could anything they did come close to my falling rocket? It just goes to show that the French knew genius when they saw it. And you must also remember that even then, some of the more perceptive and discerning critics always appreciated my work, as did many younger artists. Where would Sickert or Menpes be without my guidance? It was respected, understand my work, and appreciate what I had achieved. Little Johnny Millet described At the Piano, my first painting to be exhibited at the Royal Academy, as the finest piece of color to grace the Academy's wall for years. So yes, praise from your century is appreciated, but well earned, wouldn't you say?
We can't but agree. We have to agree with you. Thank you so much. And self-deprecating as ever.
Oh, ha! I have no time for self-deprecation.
We're aware. Thank you, Mr. Whistler.
Thank you, Martin and Mr. Whistler. Our next question comes from Hallie Swanson, who is one of the Board of Trustees of the National Museum of Asian Art, where your lovely Peacock Room resides right now.
Ah,
However, I do not see Hallie on our list, and I will ask if she's here to please unmute, but I'm just not seeing her. So
it's amazing to me that you can summon me from the dead and yet have trouble summoning people who are still alive.
well, that's partly to do with your aura, Mr. Whistler.
Ah,
It's so strong. It beats the internet. I shall take Hallie's question and deliver it. In considering your legacy, Mr. Whistler, which painting would you most like to be remembered for?
well, I think there's a rather obvious answer to that question. I think it would have to be the portrait of my dear mother. From what I can tell, it is certainly the painting most often associated with my name, Whistler's Mother. Isn't that what people call it now? Rather than by its proper title of An Arrangement in Gray and Black. She has apparently become a universal symbol of motherhood, a circumstance that would amaze but also delight her. And I believe the painting is a centerpiece of this new exhibition at the Tate. Only Leonardo's Mona Lisa seems to be better known, which I find quite puzzling. I mean, Leonardo was a good enough painter, but come now, be honest. Does his picture have the same daring, the boldness, the creativity of my own work? No other portrait can touch mine. And that said, delighted as I am to have my dear mother immortalized, this personal factor does go against my conception of what art should be. You may recall a newspaper interview I gave in which I insisted art should be independent of all claptrap, should stand alone and appeal to the artistic sense of eye or ear without confounding this with emotions entirely foreign to it as devotion, pity, love, patriotism, and the like. I even pointed to my dear mother's portrait as an example of this philosophy. I recognize her as my mother, but what can or ought the public to care about the identity of the sitter? It's amazing.
Thank you. And on behalf of Hallie, I'm sure she'll appreciate that answer. Now we go next to Michael Biscoe, who serves on the committee of the Whistler Society. Michael, could you unmute? I might be able to help you.
Silent as the grave, as we like to say.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Right, good. Well, good evening, Mr. Whistler. My question follows up from the last one in that I would like to know, when you painted your mother's portrait, you chose an unusual pose for her, being seated and in profile. I know that she couldn't stand long enough for you to be able to paint her as you had originally planned, but what made you decide to paint her in profile and with such formality? It was clearly an inspired decision, because the picture, well, I need say no more. The picture is worldwide famous.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. That's a very interesting question. And you are absolutely right about my dear mother's inability to stand in the pose I had originally proposed. But after all, I had painted people in profile before, as with Debo in At the Piano. And I must confess, too, that I had often admired Rembrandt's painting of his mother, not strictly in profile, more in three-quarter. I also recalled my only other painting I had seen of her done as a young woman, which was in strict profile. So my portrait of my mother would make a nice companion piece. Ultimately, though, it was a pose that her friends and I had seen her assume many times. I remember her using the little footstool from my earliest youth, the handkerchief, and the way she held it in her lap, and her hands positioned in just that way. It was all so familiar. I recall one of Frederick Leyland's daughters saying, "Oh, it's exactly like her." And there were also, I'm ashamed to say, but there were her teeth to be considered. They were very poor, and she was always embarrassed to smile. I mean, broad smiles were not the norm of portraiture of that time, as you know, but she felt a little more at ease not facing me directly. And it is, after all, it's futile to smile in profile. And the pose also suited my new emphasis at the time, this was in 1871, on arrangement and harmony and a limited palette. And as I said before, I enjoyed the painting as a picture of my mother, but it was sufficient that the rest of the world enjoyed her as an arrangement in gray and black.
Thank you very much.
And Michael, were you going to also mention
yes.
Okay.
I was going to mention that your pose has moved itself into the modern era, in that Brenda Zalmany painted David Hockney in the same pose, with perhaps a little more humor, in that David Hockney was clearly smiling and smoking a cigarette at the same time.
So it's what you might call a pastiche of the arrangement in gray and black.
Exactly.
And what is the title of this portrait, if I may ask?
I don't know that it has a title. It's
It
just,
does. Two dogs, and
oh yes,
um,
there's a picture on the wall of two dogs. That's right. Yeah.
yes, and it was called Two Dogs, a portrait of David Hockney as Whistler's, inspired by Whistler's mother.
Ah,
And anyone who is on this call who would like to learn more about this, and Brenda and the artist, in our most recent newsletter, which is now posted on our website, you can read the entire story about how she was inspired. It's
that's
it's
very
fascinating.
interesting.
Thank you, Michael. We'd now like to go to a member who comes to us from Waynesville, North Carolina, Daniel Desjardins. Dan, can you unmute and ask the next question?
Yes, I would be glad to. Good
Delighted.
evening, Mr. Whistler. This is the first of two questions I have for you tonight. Here is the first one. We observe in your nocturne, Black and Gold, the falling rocket, a fireworks display, and know such an elusive instance must have been very challenging. Can you describe your method for composing this almost total night piece abstraction after the fact of witnessing it at Cremorne Gardens?
I can tell you what I remember. So first of all, thank you for recognizing the genius of my nocturne. It was one of several I made in the gardens, and it's surely my most famous one, thanks to Mr. Ruskin. But I have never understood the word abstraction as applied to art, and certainly not to my art. There's nothing abstract about my falling rocket. What people mistake for abstraction, or impressionism for that matter, are my improvements on nature. I see the poetry in nature. As I said in my 10 o'clock lecture, which I assume everyone here has read, nature contains the elements in color and form of all pictures, but the artist is born to pick and choose these elements that the result may be beautiful. Nature as we see it must be transformed by the painter's eye to produce the perfection of harmony worthy of a picture. Now, having said all of that, I will say you have touched on an important challenge faced by all artists. How does one put movement on canvas? And I found this especially perplexing when painting a seascape, which also involves the movement of both sea and clouds. They refuse to stand still. They're one moment and they're gone the next. The light changes, the shadows shift, everything is at 6s and 7s. Only a master can get it right. And as you note, it was a particular, because by the time you get your paintbrush out, the fireworks are gone. So a lot of it is memory and focusing on the next firework and trying to capture that in your mind's eye, because you can't paint it as it's happening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. We'll come back to you for the next question, but right now we're going back to Bill Toomey, our chairman, for another question about Falling Rocket.
Thank you, Mr. Whistler. Another question for you, as Joan said, on the Falling Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
It apparently shocked some critics, and some critics more than others, because it seemed to value mood and sensation over detail. Were you trying to paint what the eye sees or what the soul feels?
The soul? What does the soul have to do with art? The creation of art is all about what one sees with the painter's eye. This is what still puzzles me about Ruskin's criticism of the painting. Surely he understood this point. He appreciated it in Turner's work. He seems to have been angered by the fact that I did not see nature as he saw it, or that I was simply able to translate that image on canvas more swiftly than he could countenance. You may recall my witty reply to his attorney when he asked me if I did not think 200 guineas was a steep price for a mere 2 days of work. I said the amount of time it took to create a painting had nothing to do with its price, and that I asked the price for the knowledge I've gained in the work of a lifetime. The knowledge of which I spoke was the development of my painter's eye, my ability to see nature in all its beauty. And I hope you also see the irony here, in that I did labor over some of my paintings for years at a time. What price would Ruskin have me set for that work? In the end, I think the poor man was simply demented.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Whistler, and it's very helpful that you've clarified that matter.
Thank you, Bill. Now we'll come back to Dan again for a question on another painting. Dan, can you unmute again?
Yes, unmuted.
Great, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for entertaining this second question, Mr. Whistler. The etching of La Mère Gérard from your student days in Paris is said to be an early example of your brand of realism. How were you able to persuade this eccentric, half-blind flower seller to maintain such an intriguing pose long enough to complete the etching? Are we to see the later oil portrait you did of her at the Tate exhibition?
I don't know about that, but I will tell you that that woman was sturdier than she looked. And she was shrewder than you might imagine. She enjoyed talking to me as well, which allowed the time to pass swiftly. And much of the detail in her dress and shawl, I could add that without her holding the pose. As for the painting, most of it was done in a day, though I believe I fell ill soon afterwards, so it took several months to finish it to my satisfaction. I have no idea if it will be shown in the exhibition, although it should be. It is a fine portrait, my first one, as I recall, after leaving America. I retain fond memories of the old lady, too. That I gave it to Algernon Swinburne as a gift, only to have him betray me 20 years later in his disgraceful review of my 10 o'clock lecture.
Thank you again, Dan, for that question. And Bill, you've attended the exhibition. Do you know if this painting was included?
Oh, it is. Yes,
oh,
indeed.
Fantastic. So there you go, Dan. You have that
along with everything else, is very well worth seeing.
Great.
And I hope they've hung them well. I hope they have hung them well in the exhibition.
Bill, do you want to comment on that?
They're all very well hung and spaced, and plenty of, very extensive, but plenty of time and opportunity to see them all.
Excellent.
Wonderful. So now we go to another Dan Sutherland. He is a historian, professor emeritus of the University of Arkansas, author of 2 books on you, Mr. Whistler, and many, many others, and a third one coming out on your legacy. Dan, please go ahead.
That must be a very lengthy book, the book on my legacy, Dan. I hope you've given it full length.
I labor on your behalf, Mr. Whistler.
Ah.
And good to see you again.
You as well.
I'm sorry in this, what has so far been a very sort of congenial and joyful reunion with you, but I have something of a somber question to ask. You may be aware that your tomb in Chiswick is in a very bad state of repair. Indeed, it's been vandalized more than once in the past dozen years or so. Although I assure you there is a campaign underway to restore it. I wonder, though, why you chose to be buried in that particular spot in Chiswick.
Ah, right. Well, first of all, I am aware of the restoration project, and both Trixie and I are most grateful for it. Our earthly remains have not suffered from the shifting of the ground, but the tomb itself is not very dignified in its current state. I understand that Oscar's tomb also had problems in this area and was in fact so defaced that they had to erect a glass shield around it to stop people from kissing it. I don't know if anyone was kissing my tomb. I certainly do hope they were not. Now, as you may know, the site was originally marked only by a modest knee-high fencing decorated with flowers, and that suited me. I know some of my friends thought I should have been interred at St. Paul's, like Rossetti and Millais and Turner, but that would have separated me from my Trixie, my Jinky, my Wham, my Luck, I called her, and that was unacceptable. It was the Major's idea to erect the tomb. The Major, that was my sister-in-law, Rosalind Burney Phillip. I called her the Major because she was so valuable after Trixie's passing as my chief assistant. The Major to me, the Colonel. My stepson, Edward Godwin, he was an excellent sculptor, designed it, so I could not very well have objected to their enthusiastic desire to honor me in that way. It far surpasses the grave sites of Ruskin and Leland, which is appropriate. But why did I select this particular spot, you ask? Well, first of all, because it is very near the river, which played such an important role in my life and art. It also happens to be in the same graveyard as Mr. Hogarth, one of my earliest artistic inspirations. The combination of those two was irresistible.
That certainly makes perfect sense. And I must say, I think your tomb is superior to that of Hogarth's.
Ah, good of you to agree with me.
I also have a second question, if I may. I wonder if you are aware of how visible you are in modern popular culture. Your image and representations, reproductions of your work, especially the portrait of your mother, can be seen virtually everywhere, from coffee mugs to men's ties to greeting cards, and also the use of such modern inventions as motion pictures and television. And you are portrayed fictionally in literature and satirized in cartoons. So I'm wondering, what is your reaction to being exploited in this way? And do you approve of it?
I am disturbed to hear that I am satirized in cartoons so long after the demise of Punch magazine. I would have thought that with their departure, people would have stopped poking fun at me in cartoons. But I am glad to hear that my reputation remains even in these various strange formats, because I believe someone once said there is no such thing as bad publicity. And I'm sure Oscar would have said, I wish I had said that. But it is true, and you must remember that I enjoyed enormous exposure in the popular culture of my own day. As you know, I was regularly satirized in Punch and other publications, often by my friends like George du Maurier, who also knew that this exposure could only benefit me. Henry James, another friend, he based characters in at least 2 of his novels on me. I was portrayed on stage and mentioned in advertisements for art supplies. Poems were written about me by Oscar and by my friend Mallarmé. You might say, using your modern language, that I was one of the first media stars. I'm almost certain that I was one of the first people labeled a celebrity. And I am aware of your motion pictures, which already existed in a crude form while I was alive. And television, what a marvelous invention. Just think of how I might have used those means to promote my work. I've even been reproduced as something called a bobblehead, which I find delightful. However, it does annoy me to see the portrait of my mother abused by self-proclaimed iconoclasts. Even so, I suppose it is a sign of recognition that she is an icon, and that she and her portrait have achieved a type of immortality.
I think you're correct there. Thank you, Mr. Whistler.
Thank you, Dan.
And now we go to Gretchen Welch. She's a on the board of trustees of the National Museum of Asian Art. Gretchen, are you there and can you unmute?
I hope I'm unmuted. Hi, everyone from Washington, D.C., where, you know, Mr. Whistler, we have many of your beautiful paintings and, of course, the Peacock Room, thanks to Mr. Freer, your great friend and patron. I did want to ask you about something, another famous quote of yours. You once said that art should be independent of all claptrap. Looking at the modern world, do you think art today has become too serious and over-explained?
Well, first of all, Gretchen, may I say from your photo, it is wonderful to see that even the youngest generations appreciate my work and are asking probing questions about it.
That's
as well.
my granddaughter, and she loves your work. She loves the Peacock Room.
And you are raising your children and your grandchildren well, is all I can say. As for whether art today is over-explained, no explanation is possible for much of today's so-called art. And if art requires an explanation, is it truly art at all? At its best, and I'm not saying it's all rubbish, but your modern art has retreated into the past. The purpose of your art seems again to be consumed with teaching moral or political lessons. How can such art triumph or endure? As I said in my 10 o'clock lecture, there can be no link between the grandeur of art and the glories and virtues of the state. For art feeds not upon nations, and peoples may be wiped from the face of the earth. Art is, and its ultimate objective must be to express the beautiful, as has been shown to us in the marbles of the Parthenon and embroidered upon the fan of Hokusai at the foot of Fusuyama.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Well said, Mr. Whistler. We go now to Sandra Higgins, who is both a committee member and one of the original founders of the Whistler Society. Sandra?
Hello. Hi. Hello, Mr. Whistler.
Hello, Sandra. I remember your raven tresses well.
Well, you're looking very dapper wherever you reside right now. You're doing very well, I must say. And it's lovely to see you again. Now, you mentioned earlier how much the river, when you said the river meant so much to you near your burial ground, or your burial tomb, burial ground, not the whole ground. And so how did that affect the idea of painting the Thames, you know, and especially at night? Did you realize at the time how revolutionary these atmospheric scenes would become? I'm sure you realized what the controversy might be as well. But the river has meant so much to you. Can you explain that?
Yes. Well, first of all, it was not the Thames that inspired me to paint the nocturnes, as important as that river became to my success, but rather my trip to Chile. I had never seen the evening or early morning skies as I saw them when crossing the Isthmus of Panama and on the Pacific coast at Valparaiso. I painted an exquisite crepuscule there, the word meaning dusk or twilight, with the evening and early morning skies streaked with color or crepuscular rays. As the fading or emerging sunlight streams through gaps in the clouds, the skies are clearer and brighter there too, which gives the skies a unique transparency despite the subdued light. I began my first genuine nocturne there too, with a scene of Valparaiso Harbor. I carried the memory of those evening skies with me back to London, where I found them, despite the fog and polluted atmosphere, with my painter's eye. I suppose my most famous nocturnes, a term and style of painting that is uniquely my own, are of the Thames, but I painted most of them in other places, such as Cremorne Gardens and the streets of London. The river was only the most convenient setting for the beautiful effects I wished to create.
Oh, how wonderful, the effect of Chile. For your birthday last year, you might remember that we celebrated Chile. In fact, we had the representative of the Chilean embassy come and visit. So they're all thinking
That's
about
excellent.
They're all thinking about you, and it's so wonderful. I didn't know that. Valparaiso Inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Now again, back to our illustrious chairman, Bill Toomey. Bill?
If you can hear me. Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry. Thank you. Mr. Whistler, you'll be encouraged to know that the current exhibition at the Tate Britain is very extensive and includes many of your wonderful paintings, but also includes your early sketchbooks and notebooks for St. Petersburg and West Point, which are fascinating. Did you already believe in yourself, destined to become an artist? Or were there moments when you doubted your own path?
I believe I was destined to become an artist, but the desire grew upon me gradually in St. Petersburg. Of course, I'd always loved to draw, from at least the age of 3, I'm told. But in St. Petersburg, there were tours of the Hermitage, St. Catherine's Palace, annual exhibitions at the Imperial Academy of Art. I attended drawing classes at the Academy, and for 1 or 2 years, I had private lessons with a young Russian army officer. I believe you may see my childhood sketchbook at the Tate's exhibition. But the turning point came when my sister Debo gave me an enormous volume of Hogarth's drawings. I had been very ill at the time with rheumatic fever. I nearly died, and the book helped pass the time during my long recovery. It was a revelation. I thought then, if only I could draw like that. I then attended school in England for a year, much of the time in London, where I stayed with Debo and her husband, Seymour Hayden. Seymour fan some fine prints, some by Rembrandt. He took me to galleries, exhibitions, and lectures on art, and these experiences confirmed my desire so much that when my father, who was still in Russia, wrote to me about the possibilities of a future career as an engineer or an architect, I confessed to him that what I most wanted was to be an artist. And being the tolerant and gentle man he was, he did not dismiss the idea. In fact, one Christmas, he had given me a volume of Sir Joshua Reynolds's Discourses on Art, and in his very last letter to me, before he passed away, he sympathized with my desire and said there was ample time to decide. I was only 14 years old, but I cannot help believing that my career as an artist and my insistence on perfection in my art is somehow a desire to justify dear father's belief in my abilities.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for dedicating your life to all the works that you subsequently produced.
And while we have you there, Bill, I believe Anne Toomey has the next question. Anne is our treasurer of the Whistler Society.
Good evening, Mr. Whistler. It's very special to be joining this event this evening and to be talking to you once again. My question for you is, you spent much of your life defending the idea that painting could be as musical and poetic as symphonies or nocturnes. Do you think audiences finally understand what you meant?
Well, I doubt it. Most people have no eye for art, no appreciation of it, just as the masses have no ear for music. But I did not create art for the masses. I created it for people who cared enough about it to genuinely look at a painting or etching, try to see the beauty, the music and poetry, as you put it, that I had instilled in it. And that is why I set my prices high, because most people value money above art. And I was testing them, making them choose between mammon and art.
Thank you, Anne and Bill. And we go next to Bob Roach, who is a trustee of the Whistler House Museum, which is physically located in your home, where you were born in Lowell. Bob, can you go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, Joan, thank you very much. And Mr. Whistler, it's so nice to see you once again. And my question is, what influence did Japanese and East Asian art have on your vision? And do you think Western audiences of your day truly appreciated what you were trying to achieve?
Well, I think they most probably did not. No more than they appreciated the music and poetry of which I just spoke. At least, not many of them. For the masses, it was mere decoration. And as you know, there was a craze at the time for Japanese and Asian art. But they understood that Hakusai and Hiroshige, in the simplicity of their arrangements and purity of their colors, had perfected beauty beyond all words. Look again at my tribute to them in my 10 o'clock. I am pleased, though, that you appreciate my debt to them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whistler. Lovely to see you.
You as well.
Thank you, Bob. And I think that your audience here, Mr. Whistler, is appreciative of you and your work. So next we come back to Bill.
Thank you, Joan. Mr. Whistler, my last of three questions. So you were a great wit and social figure in the Chelsea society. Do you think modern artists have lost something by no longer becoming the public personalities in the way that you did?
Well, from what I see, many of them are better known for their personalities than for their art. It is all well and good to draw the public's attention to oneself. After all, I was the master of that. The first, don't you know, to understand the importance of what is now called a public persona. And as I said in commenting on my image in popular culture with Dan, I was among the first artists to be called a celebrity. But the purpose of public notoriety is to draw attention to one's art, to have people look at it and try to understand it. If the art is rubbish, as so much of it is, what is the point?
Well said.
Thank you.
And now we come to the final question from Sarah Bogosian. Sarah is the president and executive director of the Whistler House Museum of Art, and she made a special pilgrimage to the Tate to see your exhibition. Sarah, can you ask your question?
Of course. First of all, I want to say to everyone I saw on my visit how wonderful it was to meet all of you, some of you who I have met in the past, but I made many new friends and plan to come out more often. Mr. Whistler, your exhibition was exquisite. I had the good fortune of going the night of the opening, and I went the following morning as well. And it's a must-see for everyone. I've been telling everyone about it.
Oh, so, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear, especially coming from someone who knows my work as well as you do, Sarah.
Well, we talk about you and feel you here in the Whistler House Museum of Art every single day. So you're always present here in one form or another. And on to my question. Looking back, which gave you greater satisfaction, creating your art or winning your battles with critics and rivals?
Oh, well, the art is the obvious answer to that. The so-called battles, as you put it, with my critics were necessary, either to defend my art or to insist on a point of honor. I did not engage in combat for the sake of it or willy-nilly, but what alternative did I have when someone represented my artistic intentions, or worse yet, my artistic integrity? Was I to allow Ruskin to abuse me in a way that could damage my reputation? I had to speak out. Did I not have a responsibility to expose the ignorance of even lesser critics? To take their scalps and leave them humiliated? Was I to allow Oscar Wilde's plagiarism, his theft of my carefully thought out ideas about art and the nature of beauty, to pass without remonstration? None of these battles was of my choosing, but rather thrust upon me. Whatever satisfaction they gave me was fleeting. It was always the art that mattered, only the art that I hoped to be remembered by. I destroyed paintings that ultimately displeased me, that I could not bring to perfection, that might sully my reputation. My mantra was, to destroy is to survive. And I believe the Tate exhibition vindicates me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, I feel a tugging. I feel like I'm losing you somehow.
Oh dear. I'm afraid that the connection to the other world has dissipated. Well, we thank Mr. Whistler for joining us. Bill, do you want to say a few words to our guests here?
Thank you, Joan. Thank you. I was hoping to get the chance before he had to leave to say to him, but to thank him first of all for the very comprehensive answers to what a wide range of questions, which is always adds layers of insight, which are always greatly appreciated. And I also wanted to say to him that I'm pleased that he's comfortable in his role as a celebrity and media star, and also to reassure him that the Whistler Society exists to promote his legacy, his life, his works, and that we'll do our best to make sure that we do so and maintain it. And my other point to you all and anybody you know is to use the opportunity between now and September to see the wonderful exhibition at the Tate, not once but twice or more, to absorb it all. It's very extensive and well worth a visit. So finally, Joan, if I could thank you and Darcy and Dan for this wonderful event, and for you all for taking the time to join us. Thank you very much.
And can I add to Bill's comments, a thank you to Darcy, who is our James Whistler impersonator, and to Dan, who does so much research for us in finding the answers to all of these very interesting questions. If you enjoyed this, please go to our website and consider becoming a member. We do a lot of other events that are not open to friends of the society. You must become a member. So I encourage you all to go to our website, to also go to the exhibition and consider joining this friendly group of Whistler admirers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.